Let me tell you, there's a huge conversation happening right now in the global economy, a real seismic shift that could shake up more than 70 years of financial history. And it all centers on this one big idea, a new BRICS currency.
And that brings us right to the heart of the matter, the big question on everyone's mind. After decades sitting on the throne, is the US dollar's time as the world's financial king finally coming to an end?
For the first time in a long time, a serious challenger is actually stepping into the ring. A group of the world's biggest emerging economies, well, they have a plan. And if they pull it off, it could change pretty much everything.
So who is this group? Well, they're called BRICS. It's an alliance of 5 economic powerhouses: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And together, they make up a massive chunk of the world's population and its economy.
Okay, but to really get why this idea is so revolutionary, we first have to understand the system it's going up against. So let's pull back the curtain a bit on how things work right now and see exactly why the dollar rules the world.
So how did we even get here? What gives one single country's currency so much power across the entire globe? It's not just about the size of the American economy, it's about the very architecture of our global financial system.
Yeah, the dollar's power goes way beyond just buying stuff from the US. Think bigger, way bigger. Most international trade, the entire global oil market, even when the US isn't even part of the deal, it's all priced and paid for in dollars. It's like the default language of money, the financial backbone for the whole planet.
But here's the catch. When the whole world is this dependent on a single currency, it creates a massive vulnerability for every other country out there. This power comes with a very steep price.
And this is where that risk gets really real. Because the dollar is the key that unlocks global trade, the US can use sanctions to basically lock a country out of the entire international system. It turns economic power into a massive political weapon.
And look, if you want a real-world example of this in action, you don't have to look far. Just ask Russia. When sanctions hit, their economy was dealt a massive blow. It was a brutal reminder of just how dangerous it is to rely on another nation's currency for your survival.
And it's exactly that vulnerability that's fueling this whole search for an alternative. So enter the BRICS plan, a really bold strategy to gain some financial independence.
The logic behind it is actually pretty simple when you break it down. Step 1, the BRICS countries keep trading with each other, which they already do. Step 2, instead of using US dollars to settle those trades, they use a brand new common currency that they create together. And the result? The US dollar gets completely cut out of the loop for their transactions.
So what this all comes down to is getting out of a risky situation. It's about building a parallel financial system, a sort of safe harbor where they aren't at the mercy of another country's political moves. Really, it's a play for economic freedom.
But, having a great idea is the easy part. Actually building a stable, trusted international currency, that is a whole different beast. This is a massive uphill battle, and I'm going to show you why.
Just to put this into perspective, let's look at the euro. Creating the euro took decades of intense, detailed planning, and that was between countries that were already pretty similar, economically and politically. The BRICS nations, they're trying to do this much faster, with economies that are wildly different and, honestly, sometimes have competing goals.
Just think about the sheer complexity here. You've got China, the world's factory, next to Brazil, which is all about commodities. Their inflation rates are all over the place, which makes having one monetary policy an absolute nightmare. And that's not even getting into the deep-seated political tensions, especially between members like India and China, that could just blow the whole thing up. All right, so when you put all of that together, the bold idea and the massive challenges, what's the final verdict? Is this all just talk, or are we really looking at the dawn of a new financial world order?
Well, even with all those hurdles, there's a reason why economists and investors are watching this so closely. The stakes are just insanely high. If BRICS can actually pull this off, even in a small way, it would represent a fundamental shift in global power, away from the West and toward these emerging giants.
What we're really witnessing here is the move towards what experts call a multipolar world. That's just a fancy way of saying that instead of one country calling all the shots, power gets spread out among several major players. This currency idea isn't just about money. It's a huge symbol of that change.
So, after all that, let's circle back to the billion-dollar question. Is a BRICS currency actually going to dethrone the US dollar? The short, realistic answer? Nope, not anytime soon.
The dollar's dominance is built on decades of trust, incredibly deep financial markets, and just plain old global habit. You can't just undo all of that overnight.
But, and this is probably the most important takeaway from this whole story, the real goal might not be to replace the dollar. It might just be to end its monopoly. It's about creating a world with more than one option, another lane on the financial highway, a world with more choices and less risk for everybody else.
And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to chew on. Maybe the future of the global economy isn't about finding the next top dog, the next single currency to rule them all. What if the future of money isn't about one winner, but many?